Hello, folks. Welcome back to the radio show today. We've got a really wonderful second segment. It's something that's a little bit unusual, but unusual is sort of the name of the game right now. There's a lot of things that are happening in our world that aren't totally expected. But joining me today for our second segment is a current high school senior named Leah Curtis out in Idaho. Leah, I want to welcome you very much. Welcome you to the show. Thanks a lot for being here.
Hi, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course. So Leah is a senior who has already heard back from, I think, the majority of her schools, and is making some choices about where she would like to attend college in the coming fall. Mm-hmm. I want to start with you, and the same question that I asked in our first segment to our guests, which is just how are you doing? Especially, I think you're in this moment that I think you could be celebrating. You're really excited. You're looking forward to the next opportunities. And school is closed, everything is sort of shut down. How are you sort of managing this? How are you grappling with that reality?
Yeah, so my school, I think, has been shut down for a little less time than most of the nation because it's just hit Idaho recently. But I'm doing okay for the scope of things right now. It is a little nerve-wracking, especially with the college search. Just because I had a lot of trips planned for, especially during this spring break time, to be able to visit colleges, because I think that's one of the most important parts of choosing which college you're going to attend the next year.
Right.
So that's a little nerve-wracking not having that opportunity and having those all canceled.
Now, did you get a chance to visit some colleges back in the fall or earlier on in your process?
Yes, I did. I visited about 5 colleges earlier
Okay.
in the fall. So, yeah.
How many of those 5 did you choose to apply to?
I applied to all of them. I
Okay.
actually I applied early action to most of my schools that allowed it. If I had visited the colleges before applying, I wouldn't have applied to a few of them. I was just visiting at that point to see whether I wanted to withdraw my application, basically.
Gotcha. Okay. Understood. So you have visited 5 schools. I think when we were talking last night in preparation for this, you said that you had applied to about 12 schools,
I applied to 13 schools, yeah.
13 schools in total. So you've only been to see 5.
Yes.
And can I
Yeah.
ask how many schools you've been offered admission to at this point?
I haven't heard back from one of my schools, and other than that, I got into 12 of the 13.
Okay, so you're in you're in at 12 of 13. You haven't heard back from one. You have basically a perfect record so far in terms of offers of admission. Congratulations, by the way. I don't know if there's we should sort of celebrate that because that's really awesome. So there are 7 schools that you've gotten into that you haven't been to see.
Yes.
What are you doing now to try and get some of the kind of experience that you would have gotten as a visitor that you can't get given that there's all these closures now?
Yeah. So I think one good thing about not having school right now is I do have a lot of time to dive into searching about the colleges deeper, and especially their educational aspects, because that is in the end what I am going to school for, and the college websites, and I've emailed the colleges and I've talked to a few people on the phone. That's where you can get the majority of information about the education that you're able to find at that college. In terms of making my decision further, because the campus and the feel is a really big thing for me when I'm choosing a college, I have been going on some of the virtual tours that a lot of colleges are offering, because that's the next best thing to seeing it in person.
Right.
There's also a lot of YouTube videos online that are just college students kind of making a my day in the life at Gonzaga University type thing. So that's nice to see an actual student's perspective that wasn't put on by the school exactly,
Yeah,
because you get to see more of a raw feeling of what students think the school is like.
definitely. So you said that you're diving in a little bit to the educational aspects. Are you someone that knows what you're probably going to major in when you go to school, or are you still somewhat undecided?
I would say I'm still pretty much undecided. I mean, I have biology as my major right now because most schools require you to just put what your intended major is.
Right, right.
But I'm really expecting that I'm going to be either changing within biology, what I want to do,
Hmm.
or changing my major completely like a lot of students do.
Yeah. And so given that fact, what are some of the things that you're actually looking for? Are you going to the departmental website for biology? Are you looking more at things like the general education requirements at a particular university? How
Mm-hmm.
are you covering all of the possible info that could be out there about what an educational experience looks like?
Yeah, so I have been looking at biology as a department, but I've also been branching off more into the just general science that a school offers, the type of education that they offer in the sciences, because I am sure that I want to go into sciences.
Hmm.
However, on like a different aspect, I do look at the core classes that a college requires their students to take. Because that just provides you a basis for what the school values most in their education, or
Yeah.
even within the core classes, what options you have. So I've been looking at that. I've also been looking at, say, like study abroad options. For me, what an honors college would offer,
Hmm.
that type of thing that would more be personal to my experience.
And looking at, I love what you're sort of saying about looking at those distribution requirements, those core requirements. I think that even if it's outside your major, it's important to know what you're going to have to take in order to graduate and to know what some of those options look like. And I think a lot of students get so laser focused on what they think their major is that they don't often consider, well, what else am I going to have to do when I'm a
Mm-hmm.
student at this institution? So I know you've gotten some good advice from
Yeah.
Kara, who is one of our educators. And obviously terrific. But that's something I think I would want our listeners to take home as well, is that if you're going to go online and look at academics, you don't want to just look at your major, but also consider
Yeah.
some of those group requirements as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How are you said that the sort of atmosphere, the fit, the feel of the institution is important, and I think that that totally makes
Yes.
sense. How do you get that? I mean, you have done some phone calls,
Mm-hmm.
you've sent some emails, you're looking at some videos.
Yeah.
Is there something you feel like you're not necessarily getting access to that you wish you had more information about?
Mm-hmm. To be honest, I that's the part that I've been really struggling with because the schools that I did have the opportunity to visit, one of my favorite things was sitting in the coffee shops on campus or in the student union building and observing like how students interacted, the diversity that was there, that sort of thing. And I have not been able to get that at all from virtual tours because it's basically an empty campus walkthrough for the most part with stage students, which is helpful for knowing what each building is for and what the campus itself looks like. But in terms of the atmosphere and the people, that's been a lot harder for me to get just through my computer. I would say that the only thing that has been helping a little bit is making phone calls. I Earlier in the year, I used to get a lot of calls from students from the school being like, ask me any questions that you have, and I would kind of brush that off because I was only applying. But now that's come in really handy to actually be able to talk to a student at the school. That's kind of the closest I can get right now.
Oh, I'm going to pause it right here, Ian. I think you might be on mute.
Yeah, you were for a second, but I can hear you now.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
I had clicked the button. Whoops. I can't see whether it's on or off because I have this stupid screen in front of me. Let's go back to. This is great for the video recording because it shows what happens when there's a conflict. Yeah, let's just go back to what I started saying. Do you want to give me a countdown?
Pick it up, back up in 4, 3. Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah. So I was on mute. All right,
Good.
we'll pick it back up from 4, 3, 2.
I think actually that's a great idea to have a chance to talk to students. And one thing that I think a lot of people can keep in mind is that usually students are really busy. they're in class, they've got all these obligations on campus. They're home now too. Many of them have had to fly back to their homes where they've grown up. And so they're looking for opportunities to have these conversations. I think they're still excited to talk about their school with prospective students. So how are you getting those numbers? Presumably you didn't, save the numbers of the same students who called you a few months ago. Who are you reaching out to make that contact and be sure that you have that opportunity to have that conversation?
So usually what I will do is go to the basic admissions page that all colleges have, and they usually have a contact us section that has an email or a phone number. And if you email or call and ask for a student, students are usually the ones that are working there anyways. So they will either give me a number or email me back a number that I can call.
That's great. That's the living embodiment of the advice that we give on the radio show every week when we talk about ways to reach out to campuses. And so it's great to hear that students are doing that. So let's get into a little bit of the detail now, Leah. Okay. What are the schools that you are considering? Would you say that at this point that you've got a top 3 or a top 5? Is it down to a few schools? Or are you looking at all 12 schools?
My choices were narrowed down a little bit when I got back my financial aid packages, so that of course, while it's disappointing in some cases, it really has helped in the long run because now I don't have a ton of schools that I'm narrowing down between. Sure. So as for specifics, I would say my top school right now is Loyola University in Chicago.
Okay.
And then my second choice would probably be Gonzaga, and it's in Spokane, and that's one of the schools that I actually haven't had the chance to visit yet. And then my third choice would probably be University of Utah in Salt Lake.
Gotcha. Okay. And have you been to Salt Lake City?
Yes, I have.
And have you been to University of Utah? Is that one of the ones that you saw? Okay.
So, yes, it is.
And you saw Loyola Chicago, I think you said as well. So you've seen 2 out of the final 3. And is your home pretty close to Gonzaga? I know, Washington, it's in Eastern Washington, obviously.
Relatively. It's in driving distance, so I would consider that pretty close. Yeah.
Have you thought about, I mean, I don't even know if you could take a road trip and just drive around campus. Maybe that's not any more valuable than a virtual tour would be, given that you're not going to get a chance to get the atmosphere anyway. Yeah. So how is it that Gonzaga is sticking around and competing with these other 2 schools that you've had a chance to visit and experience on campus?
Yeah, so probably the first thing is that they did give me a really good financial aid package, but that's obviously not enough to keep a school around. When I visited Loyola in Chicago, I liked so many things about the school and the atmosphere and the traditions and the values that they held there. And it is a school with a Jesuit background, and Gonzaga has the same Jesuit background. Right. And so just looking through the schools, it seems to me like they're very, very similar in not just academics, but also in values. So I guess I'm kind of putting what I saw at Loyola and hoping that it's there at Gonzaga.
Well, I think that's a fair thing to do. That's a totally reasonable approach to say, hey, I saw this aspect of this school and there's consistency in what I'm researching about this school that I haven't had a chance to visit. And that's a totally fair comparison to draw. And I think you can probably also draw some connections between what life in Spokane might be like compared to where you live. Because, we're still talking about Northwest smaller towns that are not necessarily huge cities. Whereas Chicago, obviously the third largest city in the U.S. And so that's a really big difference. Those are things that you can internalize and understand whether you're there to see it or not. You're not going to get a chance to visit, right? Any of these schools offered you an extension on a deadline to make a final decision? Is there any communication coming from the schools about how the COVID-19 is affecting their process?
I probably get about 3 emails every day updating me from different schools about what they're doing about the
Gotcha.
pandemic. With Gonzaga specifically, I was signed up for a few admitted student events when I was supposed to visit,
Hmm.
and they are doing those virtually. So I still get to listen to speakers, be in a sort of video chat thing where I can ask questions too. Which is really nice. And then the most of my colleges have actually extended their deadline for commitment to the school to June 1st.
Okay, so you still have a little bit of extra time.
Yeah.
It might be that extra time allows you more information, maybe not. Do you feel like at some point you're just going to have to make a choice that, what's going to be the thing that finally you're like, okay, I've decided, I know where I'm going to
Mhm.
go. Um,
Yeah. I think that eventually I am just gonna have to make a choice. Right
yeah,
now, it's just narrowing down the little things, kind of making a pros and cons list, either on paper
nice.
or in my head between the different schools, like say between Loyola and Gonzaga.
Yeah.
It's easy to do that just from information that you can find online or from talking to people.
Have you thought about sort of taking it from three down to two? So really thinking about, okay, what's the third choice here? Is there a clear third choice in a top two? And making it a little bit easier of a comparison to say, all right, instead of considering one, two, and three, I'm actually just looking at one or two.
Yeah, I assume that it will come to that really quickly. Right now, I'm in the process of emailing and talking to financial aid offices to kind of try and
Mm.
get some more money off of them. So when I get, when all of that is figured out, then I will probably be able to narrow it down to a final two.
Yeah, the phrase "I'm trying to get some more money off of them" is, by the
Yeah.
way, totally appropriate in the context of asking colleges for more scholarship money.
Mhm.
Probably not something you want to say in any other context, but I think here is
Exactly,
totally it's totally
exactly.
appropriate. Yeah, that works. Um, got a couple more minutes. I mean, you're still going to make your decision, and I hope maybe you can come back on sometime when you've decided and let us know what you decided and how you made that final decision. I
Mhm.
just want to ask before we end this segment. How are you feeling about senior year? I mean, the fact that a lot of stuff is being canceled in your high school, you're not going to necessarily get a chance to finish out. Maybe there's no commencement. What is a American senior thinking about right now as school basically closes down? And I don't know. Where's your head on
Yeah.
that stuff?
Yeah, to not sugarcoat it, I'm pretty disappointed right now. Even just the little things, like my prom was canceled last night.
Oh, yeah.
All the senior traditions, stuff like that. I would say the main thing is the stress about college search, but I think right now it's all disappointment for everyone. But hopefully that'll pick up in a little bit when we figure out different things, different ways to cope.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
And then how are you spending time to sort of keep your mind off of this stressful stuff? What are
Mhm.
what are some of the things that you're doing to not think about college and not thinking about the fact that prom was canceled? How do you keep your mind right during these few days?
Yeah, so I've been FaceTiming friends a lot because
Nice.
I'm not able to see them in person. Getting outside, I have organized basically everything in my room.
Uh-huh.
That's pretty much it. I'm just entertaining myself so far.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, if you got more need for ideas, you can of course always ask Kara. You can bring that to our team, and
Hmm.
I hope we get a chance to welcome you back and learn more
Yeah.
about the final choice you made. And good luck. Hang in there. Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for coming
Thank you.
on. And when we come back, our next segment is going to be all about comparing different financial aid offers. So, Leah, you might want to tune into that one when the show airs next week, and maybe
Yeah.
there's some helpful info for you there. Until
Thank
then,
you
don't go
for
away,
having
folks.
me.
Yeah, thanks
Bye.
for coming. Bye.
All right. I'll